Okay, let's start. Um, I would like to give an overview about the Shark series meters before starting. If you go to our website, www.electroind.com, you can find all the documents for all our products. But before that, the home screen, I would like also to mention that if you are interested on the Nexus series, we have upcoming webinars. If you scroll down here, you will be able to see the next webinars, and this is how you can register for them. So we have May 5th, the Nexus Programming Part 1, and May 19th, the Nexus Programming Part 2. So you can click here if you would like to register for that. To find the documents about the Shark, we can go to Products. And if you scroll down, you can see the different types of the Shark series meters. The most common Shark model is the panel-based meter, which can be the Shark 50, 100, 200, or the new Shark 250 meter. We have also the Shark 270, which is a socket-based meter, and it can be a switchboard. Also, for sub-metering solutions, we have the Shark 100S, the Shark 200S, and the MP200. So you can choose any of them. Like if you go to the Shark 250 here, you can find the brochure here, and you can find the user manual and most of the technical documents under here. To program our meters, we use the Communicator software. As you can see here, the new version of the software, it's called Communicator PQA. The previous one, if someone is still using that, it was called Communicator EXT. It was version 4, and this is version 5. To get the software, you can go back to Products and click at the Communicator PQA Power Monitoring Software. And then you can click Download CompPQA Pro. Filling the form and submit it, and this will go to the proper department, and someone will be contacting you to help you with getting the software. So let's go to the software here. I will start talking about the first basic type of the Shark meter, which is the Shark 100. And today we will be talking about the profiles of the different models. This is how we program the meters. So of course we have to connect to the meter first. I will be connecting here to a Shark 100 first. As you can see here, I'm connected to a Shark 100 meter. Once we are connected, you will get the device status window will pop up, which showing the meter name, the model, and the firmware information and the serial number. Click OK, and I'm going to Profile. At the profile of the Shark 100, we will start with Scaling. This is where we can set the CT-PT ratios and the system wiring. So the CT numerator or the primary would be the CT primary of the CTs itself. If we are using a 100 to 5, like this example here, we will set this to 100. If it's 400, we will change it to 400. And the CT denominator, that should be defined from the beginning when we order the Shark 100. So it can be either 5 or 1. PT ratio would be used if we have a voltage transformer. If we don't have a voltage transformer there, and that means the meter is using the same voltage which is used at the load, we need to set this according to the line to neutral voltage. So if we install the meter at a 208, 120 volt system, we will keep this 120 to 120. But if it's installed at a 480, 277, we prefer to change this to 277, 277. The ratio would be still 1, but that's changing the full scale value, which affecting the limits. We will talk about this later. Then the system wiring, we can choose between the Y or delta or 2.5 elements Y. And this is all about the scaling. Then we can jump to the energy and display. This is where we can set up the energy digits and how we can show the energy on the meter display. First of all, the power scale, where we can choose between auto or unit, which is the watts, kilo or mega. So it can be, depends on the load, how big it is, or we can keep it as auto, and this meter would be scaling that according to the load. Power direction, to view as a load or view as a generator. That's if we have to use the meter at the generator side instead of a normal panel. Energy decimal places, where we can assign some of the digits after the decimal, like 1 or 2, like this here. Energy scaling, again, it's unit, kilo, or mega. And if I click recalculate, it will be showing how we change that setup. Like if I choose a mega here, recalculate, it would be like this. And the energy digits, the maximum we can do on the Shark 100 is 8 digits. Demand average, this is where we can choose between block or rolling demand. Most of the utilities are using the block demand. Some of them would be using rolling demand. So we can set the interval minutes, like is it 15 minutes, 30 minutes, or 5 minutes. The sub-interval would be only used when we choose the rolling demand. Auto scroll display, that means the meter display would be scrolling between the different readings. If you want to stop that, we can check this box so the meter would not be scrolled through the readings. And you can also choose which points you want to show. Like if you don't want the meter to be showing the watt hours, you can uncheck it from here. The next tab is the communication. The communication here is only the RS-485 port. The Shark 100 has also an IRDA port at the front. You can only change the response delay for that port. For the RS-485 port, you can set the address, the protocol between Modbus RTU, Modbus ASCII, or DMP. Baud rate, different baud rates here between 600 and 57,600. We can always set this to default by click on this one. Settings, where we can give a name for the meter. Under the device designation, you can call the meter based on the switchgear, the building, or the panel name. We can also enable the password by check this box, and you can enable the password for reset only or for configuration. The last tab is the limits. So you can set a limit on the meters, and you can the meter would be logging that if the voltage or current, for example, go above that point. So we can choose the first one here, limit number 1. I'm choosing voltage A to neutral. This is the label. And you can set the high and the low end for that limit. So this is a percentage of the full scale value. That's why if we go back to the scaling, I was telling to set the PT ratio based on the line to neutral voltage. So now it's 277 to 277, and we are setting the limit. This 110% would be 110% of that 277. So that's why it's important to set that correctly. If we want to make it close, we can change this to 105%. And the return hysteresis, that's the point where the alarm would stop. We can change it to 102%. And the same for the low. That means if it's below this point, the high is above this point. We can add more, like here, I'm clicking on port number 3, and we can choose which point for alarm number 3. It can be voltage C to N like this. And then we can set the high point and the low point. So that's everything about the Shark 100 profile. Any changes we are doing here It's done on the software only. So to make this change happen on the meter, we have to click update, and then we will get this message. We say yes, and meter is now, or the software is sending the new settings to the meter. At the end, it's telling that the energy scaling had been changed. Do you want to reset the energy value? That's an option because we did change how the scaling of the energy. I would say no. You can save this profile by clicking save here, and then you can choose where you would like to save it. And you can also save it as a report like this. So you can print it or you can save it at your desk. Load, that means if you have a saved profile and you want to upload it to another meter, you can click load and you can bring that saved profile. And it's always recommended to make sure that when you do this, to make sure you are giving a different name for the new meter. So we don't have two meters at the same name. The functions on the Communicator software, we will talk about this at the end of the session when we cover all the different shark profiles. So the next one is the shark 200. As you can see here, I'm connected to a shark 200. It's the same device status window will pop up here, showing the device and the model, the serial number, and the firmware information on the right side, and the vSwitch. I'm clicking OK here and going to the profile. So the Shark 200 profile would be a little bit bigger than the Shark 100 because the Shark 200 has more features. General setting would be exactly similar to the Shark 100, at least for the CT-PT ratios. We talked about this, how you set the CT, the PT, and the system wiring. Time settings, where you can set the time zone there, depends on where the meter is installed. For the Eastern time would be -5. We can also enable and disable the daylight saving time, and you can choose when it's begin and when it's end. If you have a synchronization for the time, you can enable it from here. Let's say that you have the NTP. You can click NTP and you will choose which option card you are using for the NTP. System settings. This is where you give the meter name, similar to the Shark 100, the meter designation, and you can also enable the password for resetting or for the configuration. Communication, it's exactly the same. It's only about the IRDA port and the RS485 port at the back. Display also looks the same, where you can choose what the meter would be displaying and if you want to view as a load or view as a generator. The next tab would be the revenue and energy settings. This is where you can control the energy settings. You can assign how many digits for the energy, how many for the decimal points, and the scaling, and the same for the power and the demand. This is exactly the same on the Shark 100. This is a new feature, the transformer line compensation. You can enable this for the Shark 200, so you can make the meter calculate the compensation on the transformer or on the line. So you can enable it from here by choosing for FE only, CU only, or both. And you can go to the TLC calculator where it can help you to get the numbers required to put in here. Power quality and alarm settings. This section a little bit different than the Shark 100 because we have the limits. It's exactly the same, but you can assign more points here. And you can see here I have limits for voltages, and it's above and below. So you can set above 10%, 110% of the full scale value, and below 90%, or you can change that. And again, this is the full scale value coming from the PT and the CT ratios. The new thing here is the waveform capture and the power quality. The Shark 100 depends on which vSwitch you have, can do a waveform capture. So you can enable this, and you can say that if the voltage go above 110% of the full scale value, I want to do a power quality and waveform capture. And if it's below 90% also, you can enable that. You can have also a waveform capture for the current, and you can set that for maybe 150% or 110%, depends on your requirement. You can enable it from here. The capture sample rate can be set from here. The maximum can do 512 sample per cycle. That's if you have the Shark 200 V-Switch 6, as you can see here. You can also set how many cycles to be recorded pre-trigger for that event. You can go up to 15. Trending profiles, this is a new section also here. The Shark 100 doesn't have a memory. It's not supporting logging and recording, while the Shark 200 V-Switch 2 and above can do data logging and recording. So that's why we have this section here. It's called the trending profiles. This is where you can program what do you want to be recorded on the meter memory. So as you can see, you have 3 historical logs. You can assign different data points for each historical log. In historical log 1 here, you can see we have voltages, currents, watts, and some kind of demand points. And you can set the logging interval, like how often, every 15 minutes or every 30 minutes or every 5 minutes. So depending on how many points here and the logging interval, the system here would tell you how long it's gonna take until that memory get full. So for example here, if I choose, now we have 156 days. If I choose the logging interval every 5 minutes, that means it's recording more. So that's why it's 52 days only. So you can have historical log 1 maybe for real-time readings and historical log 2 for energy readings like this. You can assign more points in historical log 3. If you want to add some points here, you can choose from the group between the energy interval, measured value. For example, here, if I would like to add the power factor, I will choose it and add it to the right side. And as you can see, once I add more points, the time would be less. If you think that the time here is not enough for that historical log 1, we can do control that going to historical log sectors here. So grabbing this bar will assign more of the memory for historical log 1 or 2 or 3. As you can see here, I'm grabbing the bar and I'm enlarging the size of the memory for historical log 1, and the system will tell you here how many days you have. If I make it more, I have 80 days now. Also, you can see the power quality and the waveform capture also logs. You can assign more memory here. So for the moment here, we have the waveform log can do 12 captures only. If I want to make it more, I can enlarge it like this. So it's doing 20 captures like this. Option cards, it's also another feature on the Shark 200, not available on the Shark 100. Shark 200 has 2 slots at the back, can be used for different option cards. Depends on what card is used there. You will see it here on the profile. For example, here I have at option card 1, the network card. And if you have that, this is where you can set the IP address for that network card. So you can set the IP address, the subnet mask, and the gateway, and the domain name server DNS from here. And if we use the NTP as we set on the time settings on the general settings, this is where you can set the server URL for the NTP. So that NTP settings would be grabbed from option card 1, which is the network card. Service and security. This is where you can enable and disable some services. By default, the web server, the Modbus TCP, and the email alarm notification would be enabled. You can uncheck them, so you can disable it from here. Security, if you want to enable a silent mode, you can enable it from here, and you will set the IP address and the MAC address. DMP support, the Shark 200 support DMP, so you can also enable it for the network card from here, and you can set the DMP settings, the port and device address, and everything on here. The other option cards you can use, it can be 4 to 20 milliamp cards. It can be a pulse input, pulse output, relay output cards. So for example, here I have a 4 to 20 milliamp analog output cards at option card number 2. And this is where you can set the low end and the high end for that 4 to 20 milliamp cards. For example, you can assign the channels by opening this, and you can choose from the different available points for the channel number 1. And you can set the low end and the high end according to where the meter installed. Similar to the Shark 100, any changes here, we have to click update device to make that uploaded to the meter. We can also save the profile, load the profile to another meter, and we can view it as a report. That's everything on the Shark 200 profile. I'm not going to update the device. It should be the same, same process we did on the Shark 100. The next one would be the Shark 250. I'm connecting here through my connection manager list. So the same device status window will pop up here once connected, showing the name, the model, the serial number, and the firmware information. As you can see, there are some more information on the Shark 250. It's giving you the temperature, assembly date, and the option cards there. Going very quick to the profile of the Shark 250. It looks like it's something different than the Shark 200, but almost most of the features and most of the settings we covered on the Shark 200 would be here available on the Shark 250, but with some few changes. General settings, we have the Ctp ratio. It's exactly the same, where we can set the CT, the PT ratio, the system wiring. The only difference here that we have the option, if we have a wiring issue on the Shark 250, we can fix that reverse polarity issue per phase on the Shark 250. So let's say that you have a CT installed in reverse, or the CT wires are swapped between the high and the low. And instead of fixing the wiring, you can fix it from here. If you have the phase A is reversed, you can say it's reversed, and that will be fixing the polarity issue for phase A. So this feature was not available on the Shark 200. Time settings, it's exactly the same. Enable, disable the daylight saving time, set the time zone, and the clock synchronization. System settings, where we can give the name at the meter designation, and we can add some notes at the profile name and user memo. Test mode options, this is where you can set how long it's gonna take until exit from the test mode if there is no activities. And we can choose for the VA hours methods. You can choose between vector and arithmetic. On the communication here, we have something new because the Shark 250 has a USB port at the front instead of the infrared port. As you can see here, we have the USB port at the beginning. This is also default settings. We cannot change the address. We cannot change the protocol or the baud rate. So it's address 1, Modbus ASCII 57600. And similar to the Shark 200, we have the RS-485 also by default available on the Shark 250. This is where we can set the address, protocol, baud rate, and the response delay. Display configuration, we have that where we can choose what we want to display on the meter. So that's all about general settings. Revenue and energy would be exactly the same. Some more settings where we can set how many digits for each different kind of energy readings. Like we can set the digits for the watt hour, the var hours, and the volt hour, and how many points after the decimal, and the scaling between unit, kilo, and mega. The demand is the same between block and rolling, and the power between scaling between auto or kilo or mega or unit. The power and energy labeling, this is something a little bit different on the Shark 200. This is how we can choose if we want to call the quadrant 1 and 4 as a positive and 2 and 3 is negative, or we can switch it to 1 and 4 is negative and 2 and 3 is positive. All the Shark meters are doing and accumulating the energy at 2 power directions. That's why you can use them for solar application, for example. So you can see how much energy produced or generated from that solar farm. And at night, you can see how much is consumed by the equipment there. So by default, we have quadrant 1 and 4 is the positive direction, and quadrant 2 and 3 is the negative. And the same thing for the var, we can change it here. The default 1 and 2 is positive, 3 and 4 is negative. Labeling also depends on how you install the meter or how you use it. For the Shark 250, we have quadrant 1 and 4 called delivered, 2 and 3 is received. So that means delivered is the positive direction and received is the negative direction. If you are using the meter for like the panel, we call the energy delivered to the customer. If you are using that the generator, we call the energy received from the generator. So it's all about labeling here. Aggregator is a new feature. You can also, if you have an option card, which is a pulse input card, you can have the software or have the meter here aggregate the pulses to an energy reading you have on the meter. This meter doesn't have as an option card, doesn't have the pulse input cards, but this is how you can set. You have 4 aggregators you can set up. So the first source would be either the option cards, but we don't have this available here. So we have the meter energy, and you can choose which energy reading, and if you want to add or subtract that. If we have the pulse input cards there, we will have the option to add the other pulse, and the same thing if we want to add it or subtract it to that aggregator. And this is how we can set the format for this. And it's always recommended that the aggregated format should be matching with the energy format in the profile of the meter. So we have 4 aggregators can be set up on the same way. This is something new also, not available in the Shark 200, the cold load pickup. That means if you have a disconnection at the beginning of the power back, we would be having a high demand for the starting up if we have a meter installed at the factory or something using high load. So if you don't want the meter to be calculating that demand for that period of time, we can enable it from here. So we can enable it if the meter power is lost, and we can set for how long it would not be calculating the demand. So you can see the demand forgiveness interval, like for 1 minute, which is 60 seconds here or more. Also, you can enable that if there is a problem with the voltage, not only if the power supply happened, if the power disconnected, you can apply it for potential voltage drop. And if it's for all phases or one phase only, and you can set the timer there. Transformer line loss compensation, it's the same on the Shark 200. You can enable it here as we talked about for CU, FE, or both. And the TLC calculator will help you to find the numbers you have to enter here. The new feature here we have also time of use. This was not available in the Shark 200. So we can enable it or disable it from here. So the Shark 250 can be accumulating the energy based on the time. Pulse factors also, this is an internal accumulator. This can be used for testing. So the pulse for internal accumulator, by default, it's set for 1.8 watt hour. So we can change this if you want to do different pulses for testing. CT and PT compensation. We can also have the meter do the CT compensation or the PT compensation by enabling from here. It's again, it's something not that used that much, but if you want to have that feature, you can enable it from here. And you just need to get that CT and PT information to be able to add the numbers here. Power quality and alarm settings. This is also something similar to the Shark 200. We have the limits. The new thing that here we can add 16 channels comparing to 8 channels on the Shark 200. The same way we can set above and below points, and you can add more channels by click at the channel and choose from the different available points. Waveform capture and power quality, it's exactly the same. You can enable the power quality and the waveform capture for voltages and currents, and you can set the sampling rate. The maximum is 512 sample per cycle, and the pre-trigger can be 3. Logs, it's exactly the same as the historical or trending profile on the Shark 200. We have more historical logs on the Shark 250 because the Shark 250 comes with a bigger memory. Depends on which V-switch you have also. This meter is V-switch 4. That's why I have 6 historical logs. It's the same way we can assign different points, different historical logs. So for example, historical log 1 here has real-time readings, which is voltages, currents, and watt. Historical log 2 has energy. Historical log 3 has energy in interval. And the same way we can set the logging interval every minute or every 60 minutes or anything in between. And the system will give us the time available for that historical log until it's get full. By the way, when the historical log or when the memory get 100% full, the new record would be deleting the oldest record. So first in, first out. And the same way we can assign more memory if we want to have more time. Like for example, here, historical log 1, it's showing that it can be recorded for 55 months. You can have it more or less. And the same way for the waveform capture, you can have more waveform captures and more power quality events. Similar to the Shark 200, Shark 250 has 2 slots at the back, can be used for option cards. I have the network card here at option card number 1, where we can set the IP address, network, the subnet mask, and the gateway. Services and security, it's exactly the same, where we can enable the web server and the TCP, and the email and alarm notification, and DMP enabling. On option card 2, I have a fiber optic card here. This is one of the available option cards can be used. This is where you can set that fiber optic card, the address, protocol, baud rate, and other settings. Similar to the Shark 200 and 100, this profile can be saved, loaded by click at open, and then you can grab another file and update the device will be updating the profile. If we do any changes on the Shark, any of the Shark series, like for example, if I change the Ctp ratio here, and let's say I did changes in the historical logs, let's add some more points on the energy readings. And if I click update device, first of all, we will get this message saying, are you sure we want to update? We will say yes. And then no need to check any box here, because if you check the box for this setting, that means you don't want to change the settings on this. So you'll click continue. And because we did change the Ctp ratio, the system is telling you that the historical logs would be reset and the energy counters also would be reset. So it's giving you the option to retrieve the logs before proceeding with the update. So you can say yes, and then you will get this message here, or this window where you can check which boxes you want to retrieve. So you can choose the available. 4 and 5 and 6 doesn't have any data. That's why it's cannot be selected. And you will click start. It's retrieving the logs now. And once it's done, the log viewer window will pop up like this. So that means it's done. So I will just cancel this, close, and then the update is happening here. So if you do any changes on the historical logs, or if you did changes affecting the energy readings, system will give you the option to retrieve the logs before updating the profile, because that log or that energy counter would be reset. Okay, it's done. We got it here. So that's all about the Shark 250 profile. I'm exiting here, disconnect. And now I will be jumping to the Shark 270. Shark 270 profile would be exactly the same as the Shark 250. There are just two main differences. I will go through that. So that's the device status window. I'm going to the profile very quick. As you can see here, it exactly looks like the same as the Shark 250. The main two differences here is this. And the communication, on the Shark 250, we have the USB port, while on the Shark 270, we have the optical port. Unlike the Shark, the USB port, where we cannot do any changes, on the optical port, we can set the protocol, we can set the baud rate, and we can do the other changes here. The other difference would be, the new thing is the display, because the Shark 270, of course, it's a socket-based meter and it has a bigger display. So this is where we can program the display of the Shark 270. I will click on this and then edit meter faceplate screen. I'm getting this window here. So there are three modes. You can see here mode number 1, mode number 2, and mode number 3. The Shark 270 would be scrolling between the different screens here, or the different assigned screens on the mode number 1. It will not show the mode number 2 and mode number 3 unless you have, like there's a switch at the lower right corner of the Shark 270. If you swap a magnet there, that would be jumping to mode number 2 and then mode number 3. But by default, meter would be scrolling through these screens at mode number 1. There are some default screens like the watt hour delivered, watt hour received. You can choose any of the available displays here, available screens here. Like for example, you can right click on this and then assign it to mode number 1. So it will be added to mode number 1, as you can see here. The other thing you can do is you can customize a screen. Like for example, here we have the voltage line to neutral. I can have the 3 voltages and the 3 currents also on the same screen. So I can go to this, I can bring this custom screen like this, grab it here, open it, and then I will add a value with the text. And for this point here, I can choose which reading. So for example, here I'm choosing voltage A to neutral. I can set the unit, volt, and the label VAN. And I can choose where it would be displayed on the screen. Like I can make it to the left, and we can take it a little bit up. And then I can grab another one and choose current A, for example. So the unit for this would be amps, and the label would be IA. I will take it to the left also. Like this. So you can add more points. For example, you can customize a screen for the 3 voltages. We can make this smaller to have more screens there. So we can add the 3 voltages on the left and the 3 currents on the right, or you can customize another screen for the different energy readings, and you can click update screen, so it's there. You can give it a name. And you can move it up or down. It's always recommended also to have the communication settings on the screen like this here. It's showing the optical port settings. So if you want to connect to the meter on site, you can see them easily, and you can see what's the settings you have to use to connect to the meter. You can have also the RS-485 port settings. And you can add more points to the screen and customize them according to your requirement. Of course, at the end, I have to click upload to meter like this. So it's uploading the new screens to the profile of the meter. And exit from here. It's asking that there are changes. Do you want to keep them? I would say yes. And that's the only 2 differences between the Shark 270 and the Shark 250. The optical port as a communication port instead of the USB on the Shark 250, and the customized display. But everything else would be exactly the same. The power quality, which has the limits and the waveform logs. It also, as you can see, has 6 historical logs, and we can configure the sizes. The different option cards, option card number 1 and 2, revenue and energy, where we can do the energy scaling, and for aggregators and all the other settings. And the same way we can save, load a new profile, and update the device from here. So that's covered the most Shark series profiles and how we can do the basic programming for all of them. Now I would be going through the different functions we can use and we can do at the Communicator software. I will start with the connect first of all. Like the connect icon here will give you the two options, serial network and network. Sorry, serial port and network. Serial port would be if you are connecting through any of the serial ports, which can be the RS-485, the IRDA port for the Shark 100 and 200, the USB port for the Shark 250, or the optical port for the Shark 270. So you need to put the device address, the baud rate, and you can click available ports. That will give you which cable is connected to your laptop. I don't have any cable now plugged to the USB port, so I don't see anything here. Then the protocol, Modbus RTU, and these are the default settings. Flow control is none, echo mode is no echo, and parity is none, and hit connect to connect with the meter. If we are connecting through the Ethernet port, we will go with the network, device address, which is 1, and the host would be the IP address of the meter. For example, I have a meter IP address now, 10.0.0.20, and the default network port is 542. I will hit connect. And once connected, I will get this device status window, as you can see here. So I will click OK here, and then we'll go to polling. First of all, polling would be showing the real-time readings. As you can see, you see the voltages, line to neutral, line to line. This is a demo meter, and that's why the readings are not, I don't have a three-phase connected to this one. I'm going to connect to another meter to show you an actual readings. The three currents, the real time also can show the power, the real power, the reactive, the VARs, and the apparent VA. You can also see the waveform for the voltages and the currents from here. Volt A, Volt B, and Volt C. I think it's a little bit frozen. It's trying to pull the screen again. Okay. Then we have the energy, where we can see the different, first of all, we see the power reading, the same watts, VAR, and also the power factor here is very important. And the as we told about the energy readings, we have the two power directions, received and delivered. Net would be the difference between received and delivered. Total would be the summation for received and delivered. Again, if you are using this meter for a normal application, you will be seeing the negative direction always 0, and that's why the net and the total should be equal to that positive direction. You can see that energy reading per phase A, B, or C, or for the total. Harmonics, this feature would be grayed out if the meter doesn't support that. So this Shark 200V6 support the harmonics. So that's why I can see this function available. You can see the magnitude and the angle for up to 40th order for the Shark 200. And you can see the total harmonic distortion. You can choose for volt or volt B, or for volt C, or for the three currents. Phasor, this is a nice function, will help you to troubleshoot a wiring issue on the meter. Again, this is a single phase power system. That's why it doesn't look like code, but I will show you another example where you can help, where the Phasor diagram can help to identify if there is a wiring issue. Log status, it's exactly the same screen when we retrieve the logs. It will show you how many data or what's the percentage in use of the memory on the data for the historical log 1, 2, and 3. It's showing 0 now because this meter is Shark 200. We just reset the logs when we update the device. So that's why it's reset the logs, but it starts recording now. You can see that there are 6 historical logs. 6 records and historical log 1 and 2 and 3. It will show you the newest record and the oldest record. And the same thing, if you go to read log, you can retrieve the logs from there and it will show you the same window. Device status, this is the same window which pop up once we are connected to the meter. You can always go and check the firmware information from here. Alarms, this is the limits we had set up on the meter. So you can see if any of the points are out of the limit. As you can see here, we have 5 channels. We have 3 voltages, watts, and frequency. So they are all in the limit. If I have voltage go above the 132, we will see this in red saying out, and it would be logging in the memory at the alarm limits log. Real-time poll, this is where we can see the real-time readings. The status polling, it's the same polling window we did before. We can also go to energy, power and demand and energy, or we can go to grab the demand readings from here. So you can see the different demands for total or per phase. Power quality and alarm, where you can see the different functions we talk about here, limits and option card input status if you have an pulse input cards. Tools will help us to reset some information on the meter. Like for example, if we want to reset the energy accumulator, I will go to reset device information. And from here, I will check the box for the reset energy accumulators. If you want to reset the historical logs, like 1, 2, 3, or any of the alarm logs, you can check them all by this and click reset. Max minimum blocks would be resetting the demand readings also. The other thing at the tools we can do is retrieve the device time. So now we are looking at the meter's time and the date. If this is not correct for any reason, you can always set it from tools, set device time, and you can use the PC time. Just make sure that the time is correct here, or you can use a different time according to what you enter here, and just send this to the meter. So it will synchronize the meter time with the laptop time. Change V-switch. This is, let's say that you have a Shark 200 running on V-switch 2, and you decided to upgrade it to V-switch 4 or 5 or 6. You would need to contact the sales team first. They will give you the offer for that. And this is something nice that you don't have to send the meter back for that. It's a key feature upgradable. So we will generate a code and provide you the code. Then you will connect to the meter, go to tools, change V-switch, apply the code and update, and then the V-switch would be updated and the new features would be available at the meter. Edit current device profile. It's similar how we open the profile. If I click on this one, it will open the device profile. Device information, it's the same status information. Option card information, this will show you what do you have as an option cards. As you can see here, I have at option card 1, the communication network card, and it will show the serial number and the firmware for that network card. Since we have the network card as an optional here, that's why we have a firmware for the Shark 200 or the Shark 250, and we have another firmware for the network card itself. And it shows option card 2 as an analog 4 to 20 milliamp card. Relay control, that's if you have a that option card installed at the meter. Since we don't have it here, you cannot see it, but if you have a relay card, you can control it from here. If the meter needs a firmware update, this is where we can update the meter firmware. Go to Tools, Meter Firmware Update. We will browse it, choose the file, and hit Start. And it will take a little bit time, depends on which meter and which firmware we are using. It's always recommended to update the firmware for the meter or for the network card when connected directly to the meter, just to make sure that during that update, you will not lose the connection and meter would be running in a safety mode. This is the same for the firmware update for the network card. As I told you that there are two firmwares, one for the meter and one for the network card. Manual waveform capture, since this meter is V6 switch, we can do a manual waveform capture for testing or trigger that manual capture from here. And Ctp compensation, if we have it enabled, this is where we can see that factors. Network card status here will show you the network card. It's running. You can find the MAC address for that network card. You would need this if you are using the DHCP, for example. Instead of setting a static IP address, you will provide the MAC address to the IT team to give you the proper IP address can be used. So this is where you can find this information. Low level access, this is another window where we can use a special commands if we need to grab some information from the meter. For example, if you have a password enabled and for some reason you forgot that password or you lose it, the only way to retrieve that password is using a special command. We will send it to you. You have to connect to the meter, go to Tools, Low Level Access, and use that command and send us the screenshot for the response you will get here. And according to that, we will be able to provide you the password for that meter. Send meter restart commands. This is like power cycling the meter, but it's just a software restart. So you will check the box here for that meter and click restart. And that's like resetting the meter. It's not resetting, it's restarting, like rebooting the meter only. We can see different options and different features of the tools, depends on the meter. Like for example, if I connect to the Shark 250 again, if I go to the tools here, we can see the security. So the Shark 200 and the Shark 100, you can enable the password at the profile itself. The Shark 250 and the Shark 270 has more options on the security. So you can go to Tools, Security, Enable. I would say yes. And I'm getting this window here. So I would put the password first. So this is the password I'm going to use for the admin. And once I click OK, I will get this window here. As you can see, you can add more users and give them different, let's say, privilege. So what they can do with, like this is as a security thing. So you can assign for user one only few functions. Let's say that user one can only reset historical log one, not all of them. And he can retrieve historical logs. So he cannot do the other functions. And you can give the name for user one and give it another password. So now if I connect to this meter using user one, and if I try to reset, you can see that I have only reset historical one available, and I cannot do the other resets now. The other thing also, if you have a Shark 270, the 4G meter, instead of the network card status, you will see the 4G card status. I'm going now to connect to another meter where I can show you the phasor diagram and how I can look at the phasor diagram for a real power system. So here I'm connected to one of our meters in the factory. And if I go to phasor, as you can see here, I have the three voltages, VA, VB, and VC, and they are 120 degrees apart from each others. That's a normal power system for a Y system. And you can see the three currents of each phase. They are lagging or leading that voltage by a small angle. If you have the phasor diagram like this, that means the power factor reading is really good and you don't have any wiring issues. Like if we look at the power factor reading here, it's a little bit slow because I'm connected through the VPN to this one. Here we go. You can see that the power factor here is 0.967. If the phasor diagram was looking like something different than that, you have the currents not lagging or leading by a small angle, or the voltages not 120 degrees apart, you can always take a screenshot for that phasor diagram and send it to support@electroind.com, and we will be able to help you with the required rewiring to fix the issue. The last thing I would like to cover, since we have more time here, is the log retrieval. We talked about this when we update the profile. When we retrieve the logs, a DB file would be created. It will be here if you go to View Options and you choose the first one, Retrieved Logs, go to Selected Directory. This is where all the DB files would be saved. And the system would be updating the same DB file if you retrieve the logs from the same meter with the same name. That's why it's really important to make sure that you have a name for each meter and it should be a unique name. So as you can see here, we have DB files for the Shark 200 and some kind of Nexus meters. The new models have the DB file would be created in a folder with the name and the serial number. When we retrieve the logs at the end of the process, we have another software pop-up called Log Viewer. So the log viewer is the software which is used to view the data from that DB file. So you can always open the log viewer without being connected to any meter. Click meter 1, open log file, and it will take you to the folder where all the DB files are saved. So for example, if I would like to view the data for this meter here, I can set the time range, either a custom range or the previous month. And I can set the data points. You can add them all to the right, or you can maybe grab just the energy reading if you want. And the var hours. Click OK. And according to what the DB file has, these functions would be available or grayed out. So historical trends is available. And now we are looking at the last month data of that meter with that points. With the free software, the log viewer, it comes also with the free software, and you can always double click here. Once this is highlighted in blue, you can right click, copy this, and we can save it in an Excel sheet to have it as a report. The first column here is for the timestamp. You have just to right click and change the format for a date and time format. So you can manually grab the required report and save it in an Excel file. That's all about the Shark series programming. And just a reminder for you, if you would like to participate for the Nexus programming, you can go to electroind.com and meter software training. You can register here for the next upcoming webinars, Nexus Programming 1 and Nexus Programming 2. Thank you very much for you joining today. If you have any other questions, if you need more help with the meter programming, you can always send an email to support@electroind.com.